Hey, 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 welcome back to another episode. I am just so grateful to be able to finish and talk a little bit more about being a mom and parenting today. Um, I was just sitting here thinking about the difference between, it's going to be 30 years on Sunday, and it is just a few days away. And it's just so crazy that my oldest will be 30. And a week later, my second oldest will be 24. And my third child, my son, he turned 20 in June, and my youngest turned 11 in July. And I just think about the time that I've had with each one of them, but the growth I've had. Um, I feel like so many parents are buying up those books or getting gifted the books and looking for all the parenting hacks online and just really sometimes just trying to keep it all together. And, you know, I have gone through mom seasons of anxiety, of fears, of worry, of doubt, of joy, of gratitude, of love, of so much confusion, so much uncertainty. And there was just a lot. There was just some heavy times and some joyful times. And it was just a mixture of every emotion you can think of throughout the 30 years. And I can tell you that the season I'm in, these last several years, when I started working on my mental health and my physical health, um, it was really this is the best season of my journey yet with my kids and with my grandkids and with my nieces and my nephews and for a moment I had that mom guilt and I had that mom, let me kind of back that up. I had that mom guilt all my life. From the moment that I got pregnant, I think that shame and guilt was there because I got pregnant at such a young age and there was so much judgment around that I wore it like a badge, and it wasn't a badge of honor, it was a badge of shame and guilt. And so I feel like a lot of that played a big role in my life. And after um, after having Megan and being a teen mom for not just a year or two, but for several years, getting pregnant at 14 and a half, you're spending, half of your teenage years, most of your teenage years, a parent. I would kick and scream and say it's not fair, but I think that's just silly. Um, I think each person is their journey is unique, and mine has been most definitely very unique. And I'm not here to place judgment on someone else or anybody else or to say anything nasty because after being treated the way that I had been for most of my life, I just want to love people. I just want to be so kind and so loving and so understanding and so patient. And I just want them to understand that they have someone who gets it. And I think that so many of us wish we had family who felt that way or had family who really supported them. I was fortunate. Um, I was very fortunate in my mother journey and my motherly journey, and I didn't notice it, if I'm being honest. I love my mom so much, but I didn't notice how fortunate I was to have her and my dad as parents until I was older. And I think that happens to a lot of us. I think we don't realize the incredible human being that they are and the things that they had to overcome and the things that they had to endure and go through and overcome. The just the different generations of life that was happening, mindset and trauma and just life. And we don't give enough credit sometimes to our parents because we think that they're screwing it up with us or we think that they did. But in all reality, they were just doing their best to hold it together too. And so when I think about that, I'm just so grateful that I can recognize that today. And I pray that my children, my nieces, my nephews, your children, I pray that we all can see that, even if we don't have a relationship with our parents, even if it's toxic or unhealthy and we can't, even if they're no longer here or whatever it is, or you have a healthy relationship today, like I hope that you can recognize that they did their best with what they had, even if it wasn't good enough for you. And I know that sounds really crappy, right? But it's not. Um, when I think about how I started off as a parent and I was just like glued to my kids, and I thought that it was selfish for me to like take time for myself. I used to think that it was selfish um to not be, that mom that was with them 24/7. And when I was in my addictions and my alcoholism, I was an active alcoholic, meaning I was still parenting, I was still working, and I was just being an alcoholic on the time that I wasn't. And I started getting what I was doing was masking my problems with the alcohol and the addictions. I was masking my problems. I was masking my trauma. I was masking my fears, my doubts, my shame, my guilt. I just had this F it to the world kind of mentality where I just didn't give an F. And I just didn't give a flying F, and I didn't want nothing to do with it. And going through those stages of my life, I realized it was just my mental health that I was battling the trauma, and I hadn't dealt with any of it. I had all kind of wrapped up in a little box and thrown away in a closet and kind of wrapped up with a bow and just kind of left it there. And I would want to fix and help everybody else. And I'd want to people please. And I would want to just like, people always thought, like, I always thought I was the glue to everything. And you may hear me say things like that about my own family, but I really thought that I kept kind of bridges connected. What I didn't realize was it was just because it's just the way I vibrate, and it's just the person I am. I'm a nature and nurture kind of person. And when you, I read something, and I truly believe it. And it's when you behave a certain way and you like over emotionalize, or you over love, like want to help people and want to fix them and want to make things good for them, it's usually because you were hoping that in your childhood or your like adolescence that your parent or somebody in your life would have done that for you. And so when I heard that, and I didn't say that exactly like I read it, but it's very similar, right? Like it made sense to me because like I felt like I was neglected in some areas of my life that I really needed help. And I didn't know how to get that help. And it wasn't anybody's fault necessarily. It was just what it is. And a lot of people can feel like that. They don't realize they have the resources and the tools. And especially today, we have this huge social media thing, right? So there's so many resources. You can YouTube and Google dang near anything and get answers these days. And and so like for me, I didn't know the resources because we had dial up. Like we had dial up, and I didn't even have the money to own a computer, like let's be honest. And so not even internet. And so when I think about that stuff, and I had a child to look after. So that was my main focus, and school. And so I really wanted to graduate high school. I really wanted to get my degrees. I really wanted to be a teacher. I had these desires of doing these things since a very young age. And so I just knew that those are the things I wanted to do. And so I just stayed really laser focused on those things. And um, I lost a lot of sleep. I lost a lot of sleep. And so many people we sleep on a lot of life. I know we get so tired and so exhausted, but I'm here to tell you that like sometimes our body needs that a little bit of fatigue, and that so we'll take a rest day, but every day is not meant to be a rest day. And so like we've got to find a balance of our schedule, and everybody's looks different. And mine change seems to change because of the chronic stuff. It seems to kind of change with the seasons. And so as the colder weather comes, I want to hibernate. Like I just feel like everybody's like that though. We just want to hibernate. We want to get out the hot coffee and cocoa and the tea, and we want on our fuzzy slippers and pajamas, and we just want to get out of the blankets, and I wish I had my fireplace back. You know what I mean? Like we just want to snuggle and just stay warm. And so for me though, I really have to stay disciplined. And so as a mom, what I've learned is there's so much chaos going on when the kids are younger. Like I am just not going to lie. When they're younger, you're dealing with a different, another human being, right? First off, I don't care what the books say. They're their own individual self, and each one of them is so unique and individual in their own way. But we're dealing with this other human being with that has emotions, and we're just trying to navigate things, and we're thinking like we're going to lose our minds because we don't have enough time in the day, and we don't have enough this and enough that, and we're always talking about the lack. We're always talking about what we don't have. And I know I was guilty of this a lot when my kids were younger, just talking about how I didn't have time, or I didn't have energy, or I didn't have this, or I didn't have that. And I remember just feeling so exhausted all the time and really never having time. And I didn't know it until now. And I'm looking back at like all my parenting, and I was just kind of reflecting on this. 30 years is coming up, and I'm like, I think about it, January I got pregnant. So 30 years ago, I was pregnant with a baby, right? And like I think about these things, and I think about like just the holding her in my arms after having her and looking at her. And we were just talking about it the other day, her and I were. It's just so crazy to think I was talking about my 30-year-old, almost 30-year-old, about the day they were born. And we were talking about just, I told her, I said, like, she saved me. I was headed down a path in my life of so much self-destruction that I probably would not be here today if it were not for that little girl. And God knows what he's doing. As hard as it is, if you're the parent who has a teen who's pregnant or has a baby, get rid of the shame and the guilt and all the fears and all the doubts and the worries, and start loving the hell out of that baby and them, showing them how proud you are of them, cheering them on, supporting them, rooting for them. All the love and light and guidance and gratitude that you can give is going to come back. And what I didn't know is I struggled when Megan started getting older. I started getting scared. I started having a lot of worry and a lot of doubt and a lot of fears, and I started really getting in my own way. But it hindered my parenting. It affected my mental health. It affected my relationships. It affected how I parented my children. And I had moments of like where I didn't have those fears and everything was good, and then moments where they would just consume me. And after having Max, I, Megan was 6 years old, and I literally, got postpartum depression and didn't know what that was. It really wasn't a big thing, and I didn't really know what it was. And I didn't even know about it until like later when I seen on the news that a mom had actually pushed two of her kids in her car, buckled them in their car seats, and drowned them in a lake. And I was a very young mom when that happened, and they had said postpartum depression. These were the symptoms. And I was like, wow, I have felt that way, but never to that extreme that I would hurt my children. But it was that moment that showed me that like I needed to ask for help because something wasn't right. And so, um, when Max was a baby, we did some counseling, and the counselor could see that we weren't right for each other and that there was red flags in our relationship, and I was blind to them. And I look back now, and there were some really pertinent questions that she asked me in that room while the four of us were sitting in that room. And I remember Max being in the car seat. And I think the reason why I said the answers that I said was because if she would not get me and my kids out of that situation in that moment, that very moment, I think that I feared for my life. And I didn't realize it until looking back and reflecting. And so, what I would say for somebody that's in that situation, or maybe you know somebody, do some self reflection and see what's good in your life. And I know we can look at the crap all day long, but when you start looking for the good, you start speaking life over the good starts happening. And then also, like, it reveals what's not so good. So, with the darkness always comes to the light. And so, if we're talking about what's good and we're sharing the stuff and we're writing down and we're analyzing the things that are good in our lives, we have to be honest with ourselves. And we have to be honest with ourselves. Like, there's just no way around it. And so that allows us to see the truth. And so I didn't do that. And that's why I recommend it now, because I did not do that. And now I do that. Now in my day to day, I once a week take a time to self reflect as a mom, as a parent, as a business owner, as a spouse, as a human, as as a daughter, like all the things, as a friend. Like, I look and I just saw as a person, like who I am. I just look and I self reflect, and what was good in my week. I do it daily, like what was good in my day to day, especially on a rough day. If I'm having a rough day parenting, or I'm having a rough day with my health, or just day to day in general, or just everything seems to be like, lots of contrast just coming at me, then it's, what was good today. And by reflecting on what was good today, I'm a better parent too, because then when my kids are having a hard time, I can give them that same tool, teach them that same tool so that they can look and see how they're good. Now my son, he's 11 now. Since I've started utilizing that skill and using that tool, he will at nighttime before bedtime say, "So this was good today. This was good today." And he tells us what was good in his day. And then he said, what was good in your day? So then I'm able to tell him what was good in my day. And Sean is able to tell him what was good in his day. And we can all talk about it. And it just brings more good days. And so um that was something that was a huge tool that I did not know even existed for parenting, like for being able to help people um get through the motions of the days that they felt like crap, right? You can change that feeling. You don't have to sit with that feeling of grossness. And that's what I'm learning. And you ever have children where they just struggle with you disciplining them? They struggle with you, being that parent for them. Like, they struggle with you, you guys are button heads, right? This is an opportunity for you to change that. And a lot of parents are just, because I said so. How many years I spent telling and fighting with my teenagers and my kids. Man, my oldest was climbing out windows with her friends. My youngest at the time was, the 20-year-old. At the time, he was, little, not even, not even six yet. And, they're 10 years apart. So, like, I've got, a 14, 15-year-old teenager and her friends, two or three friends, and my youngest is coming into the living room and we're all watching a movie, and a bunch, whoever's, not, she's grounded, and the friends got grounded while the friends were there, and the friends couldn't go home. Like, it was just a mess, right? Just trying to parent and trying to figure out the sloppiness of it. And I'll never forget my youngest running in, and he says, "I want to go with them, and I'm so mad at her." And I said, "What are you talking about?" And he said, "Megan, she's climbing out the bedroom window with her friends, and they won't let me." And I run out the front door, and lo and behold, two of them are out the window, and one of them is hanging out the window. And I'm like, "What are you doing?" They were trying to sneak out in the middle of the day, thinking they weren't going to get caught. And little brother come running and tattled, and he was so mad. He just wanted to sneak out with them. He wanted to climb out the window. He was my climber. And so, like, I was just like, what am I going to do with this kid? I was at my wit's end. I was single mom. I was trying to figure it out. I was struggling with my own problems, struggling with my own things. And then all my kids were going through their stuff. And here's this teenager that is just giving me so much heck. And scared the bejesus out of me because I remember being that kid. I remember sneaking out and my mom catching us, and she went through the front door and she's like, so when you guys are done sneaking out that damn window, she's like, don't forget you're climbing back in. You're not coming through the front door. Don't even try it. And she knew we struggled getting out because she watched us and we didn't know. And so parents aren't, we're not as, old or as just we're not as, you know, how do I express it? Dumb as you think we are. Um, we've done things or said things, or our friends have that resonate with us that remind us why we're worried about you. And what we've got to really start doing as parents is trust them. We've got to trust them to make the right choices. We've got to trust them to have learned from us. And if we were the ones that didn't make those right choices or we didn't have the right communication, we need to go and own that. I think my biggest problem was that I had parents in my life, one disciplined and one did not. The one that did not disciplined, I could literally, probably get away with anything I felt like, and it would just be he was just so quiet. I think he was scared to discipline me because he felt like he screwed up with my brothers and sisters. And that's what I think. It wasn't that he didn't want to, it's that he didn't want to mess it up. And then one parent was trying to do all the discipline and she was just chaotic and so sick of it. You could tell she was fed the F up. She'd done it with all them other kids that by God, I should have figured it out too. You could I look back and it was written all over their faces. But my mom was that mom that she demanded respect. She demanded respect. And because I said so was probably one of the biggest phrases I heard from her. And she did not take our crap. Like I said this was BS one day and was 12 years old. And I told my kids, I was just talking about it the other day to her. She's 81 now. So, we could kind of laugh about it. But I was telling her and my niece how I got mad because I couldn't go across town and she knew I wouldn't get home in time and she said she didn't have the gas money to take me. And this was in the early 90s, very beginning of the 90s, 1991. And I slammed down our 70s dining table chair and popped the seat off. And later we found out those seats came off pretty easily. But no, no. She got so mad that I broke our chair and I slammed the chair and was like, this is bullshit. And I'll never forget, I went flying. I flew about 5.5 feet into the wall. She smacked me so hard across the face. I seen my I told the kids, it's like Muhammad Ali spit flying, like when you get the spit just flying. I felt like that. And I touched my cheek and I was like, you hit me. And she's like, you damn right. And I'll do it again if you disrespect me. And I was just thought she was the meanest person in the world. And I wasn't, I told myself I'll never do that to my kids. You know what I mean? I told myself I would never do that to my kids. And I'll never forget when Megan was 16 and she did something. I'm not going to say it on here because that's just not right for her, but she did something. She does what it is. And oh my goodness, my heart fell through the floor and the fear and the worry and the oh my goodness. And disrespected her grandma and disrespected herself and me. And oh gosh, I was such a scary moment. And I remember out in my mom's courtyard, I had Megan by the shoulders and I'm just kind of shaking her. I'm like, what do you think you're doing? She's like, I don't know. I went into my mom's place and I hugged her and cried. And I'm like, I'm so sorry. I was such a bad, awful kid to you. Because I just, in that moment, had no idea what I was going to do with her. Had no idea how to parent her. Had no idea how to get through that moment. Had no idea how I was going to be able to keep my composure and my cool. Had no idea how I was going to be able to calm myself down and not be upset. Had no idea how I was going to be able to forgive her. Like, I just struggled with all these feelings, and I told my mom, and you know what my mom said immediately? She said, "I love you." And it was that unconditional love that she always gave me when I'd screwed up or didn't screw up that I think sustained me all these years. And so I knew I needed to do the same. And so after acting like a freak parent and for calming down, I realized I just needed to love her. She was struggling on the inside too. And it was being expressed on the outside. And so it took me quite a while to recognize that my kids were in crisis too, because I was in crisis. And people didn't recognize it. I feel like it's more recognized more today just because social media has shown it so much and has talked about it so much and has expressed the feelings and what it looks like and the patterns and the things. So it's like more common to know. But I also feel like it's still not enough. There's not enough awareness. And so for me, we all had PTSD and I didn't know. And that post traumatic stress disorder really, really hindered how we coped with things and did things and operated on a day to day. And so, what changed and how I got us past that is the counseling really helped. The moving forward and making decisions that we didn't live in our past anymore was a huge victory, and that's been something we've been working on overcoming for several years now, over a decade. And for some people, it takes longer. Like, you just have to give yourself the grace. But I will tell you, I was not fully equipped, and neither were my children. And I feel like this whole last year, I've become more equipped and I've gained a better understanding of my walk with Jesus. I've gained a better understanding of God's plan for me and for my family. And I became more spiritual, and my relationships with Jesus really changed. I got sober. Christmas of 2017, I kicked the final vice, and that was alcohol. And I'd spent 5 years sober from everything else. And this time it was that alcohol. And so um, I just knew that it was the root of my problems. I started doing the homework and started seeing myself sober and not sober. I started seeing the difference in my personality. I also started recognizing genetics and family history and how they played a huge role in my addictions and my alcoholism. Um, when when my spouse or anyone else has ever addressed the how do you know you're an alcoholic, um, being a parent and alcoholic, I'm going to talk about that for a minute. I was introduced to alcohol at 4 years old. So a lot of people, I don't know if you know that. So 41 years ago, I took my first sip of alcohol. And I started getting molested a year before that. And alcohol was an escape because it numbed me. It numbed everything around me. And I recognized that at a really, really young age. And I spent 3 years of my life with alcohol in my life while I was being molested because I wanted to numb those feelings and emotions that were tied to that molestation. It creates bondage with your abusers. It creates anxieties and fears and so much stuff that a little kid doesn't, like, not even an adult can fathom it. Imagine being a little kid trying to understand it. And so I was introduced to alcohol surrounded by not great experiences at a very, very young age. And I was one of those people that from the time I was 4 years old until 2017, gosh, I don't even know. I'm 40, but I don't even know how old I was in 2017. Okay. I'm not gonna do the math. Gosh, now I'm gonna want to do the math. Okay, I'm gonna do the math. Um, I was introduced to alcohol at that young age. And so because of that, because of that, um, I feel like I was 38. Okay. Till I was 30, from 4 years old to 38. And I feel like because of that, there was such a longevity of history of it just numbing. And I knew it was a vice that numbed, that I didn't consume alcohol all the time. I recognize the patterns today. I didn't know this until recently. I started really doing some self-reflection deeper, right? I recognized that for me, alcohol was that vice, and I used it when things weren't going great. So if you look at the history of my life, it didn't matter how old I was, like little, little, little. Okay. 4, 5, 6, 7. And then I stopped at 8, and I stopped at 9, and I stopped at 10. And by the time I was like 12, 11 and a half, 12, I was back to drinking because life was going like not great. Like I was struggling trauma wise. Okay. And 13 and 14, I was drinking. And then I got pregnant with Megan and I stopped completely drinking. And I never drank again until I was going through divorce with her dad at 19 and a half, 20. And then I look at these patterns, right? These are patterns in my life. And so it was a vice for me that I used to numb my problems. And it wasn't a healthy thing. It wasn't something I enjoyed. Um, I enjoyed not feeling things that I didn't want to deal with. I enjoyed not feeling the trauma, not feeling the shame, the guilt, the doubts, the fears, the worries. I enjoyed unplugging from my life and reality. And then there was a time period where it just became consistent, more consistent daily. And and I look back and I'm just so grateful that God sobered me up. It was the grace of God that I got sober. It was me standing in my kitchen Christmas morning. Every Christmas I'd make a hot toddy, right? Pouring some whiskey and you make a hot toddy. And it was that morning when I was gonna make a drink Christmas morning like I always did, right? And I recognized the night before was the first Christmas that the kids put milk out without alcohol in it, without making them like a mixed drink or like they put milk in it. And the next morning, I recognized that if I got a call from my daughter who was an hour away at the children's hospital with my granddaughter who was fighting cancer. They'd already been there for the whole year since the end of March. And I realized that if I got a call and they needed me to be there, that like I couldn't get there. Like I couldn't get there. And I didn't like that feeling. I did not like that feeling. And I just asked God to just help me in that moment get through that and to keep me sober. And it struggled as a mom and a grandma now. It was just that's what sobered me up, was that they needed me to be sober. So most of that whole year in 2017, I had stayed sober. Through all the hard stuff, I felt the pain. I felt the emotions. They were hard. They were hard. I at one point went and seen a counselor and just dumped my whole entire life story on this counselor, like an emergency session. Spent 30 minutes dumping on the guy. Poor guy. I love that guy. Thank you, Jerry. And he told me, I got a sign over on my desk. And he said, look at that sign. And it was a wooden sign and it said, it is what it is. And he said, yes, it is. Now you can choose to live in all of that mess in your past, or you can choose to just recognize it is what it is and move forward today. You're sober today. You're healed today. Like you're doing the things you need to do for your family today. And I just thought, my goodness, he's right. He is so right. And so that was about a couple weeks after Liv's diagnosis in April of 2017. And I had felt like I'd screwed up being a mom. My kids were going through so many medical things and emotional things. And one of them was in and out of the hospital. And oh my gosh, there was just so much trauma attached to the domestic violence and to the lifestyle that I had put us in, I felt like, right? And that mom guilt was real. But I will never forget every single day in my kitchen, I would stare at those Costco sized booze bottles and I would just say, you are so awesome for not drinking that. I am so proud of you for saying no. You're doing a good job. You don't need that. That's not for you. You can do good without it. You're doing a great job without it. And I kept getting asked by friends and family if they wanted me to take that off their hands and take it off my hands and throw it away, or, you want me to take that for you? You don't have to keep it there to tempt you. And I told them, no, I wasn't ready for it to leave. And so it sat there for a whole year in my kitchen, one whole year, both of them. Costco sized bottle of fully tequila margarita mix, jumbo, and a Costco sized Moscato wine. And they sat there for that whole year. And Christmas morning, the following year, I was able to have the courage to know that I was done drinking and I wouldn't drink again. And I was able to dump them down the sink. I still crave alcohol today. And I understand why I won't drink it. And I'm so proud of myself for the willpower and the courage to know I'm a healthier person without that. To know that my family has a healthier me. My health is impacted by not drinking it in a better way. There's just so many wonderful yeses that I can say because I made the choice to be a better mom. That's really what it was. I wanted to be a better mom and a better grandma. Because I know that like I'm raising human beings that are going to go into this world and raise more human beings and are going to be a light to this world, and they're going to make an impact. And so I want to leave good people to the world. And I wanted to raise good people. And I can say today that my children are incredible. Like they are so incredible. And I'm not just saying that because I'm their mom. I'm saying that because I've heard so many other people say that too. And I've seen their courage in action. I've seen their faith in action. I've seen how they love people. I've seen how they have overcome things that were meant to make them not overcome them, right? I have seen how they have pushed through the hardest things that life can throw at you. And I've watched them be so beautiful in doing so. Even if they don't see it in themselves, I've witnessed it. And as a mom and a grandma and an aunt, I am so proud of these kids. They beat the odds and they broke generational curses, and they're breaking generational curses and cycles. And, somebody said to my daughter Megan, just recently, somebody said, teen moms, I can't believe that people like teen moms are so dumb. Like they always just end up making more teen moms, like their kids become teen moms. And it just becomes this horrible cycle that the taxpayers have to take care of and blah, 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 blah. Right. And like they went on and on talking really badly about teenage mothers. And my daughter was standing, like it's their friend, and my daughter was right there. And my daughter said, I am the prodigy of a teen mother. And the friend said, what do you mean? And she said, my mother got pregnant with me in 8th grade when she was 14 and a half. And she had me her freshman year of high school when she was 15. And the friend just was shocked because she would have never, or they would have never expected Megan to be the prodigy of a teenage mother. They said so. They said, no way, really? And they said, yeah, I'll be 30 in October, and my mom just turned 45. And Megan was so open and vulnerable with them about it. And I am just so proud of her because she didn't become a teen mom. She chose different for herself. And I'm just so proud of her for that. And I'm proud of my niece because I raised my niece from 12 to 21, and I still had that same fear with her. They both had their first babies at 21. And it may not seem like a big deal, but it's a big deal because it's breaking those patterns that generations have. Both my niece and myself, like, and Megan, like my sister was a teen mom, and she, had her first baby, got pregnant at 17, I'm at 18. And so like I think about that, like it was just patterns, and for our kids to break that. The alcoholism is another one, and so it's the abuse. It's like saying, I'm not going to tolerate these things that my mom tolerated. I watched her tolerate them. I won't be like that. And I'm so damn proud that they can learn from my experiences. I'm so damn proud of that. They may not have been the best experiences, and it sucks that we had to have them, right? But I'm so grateful that they could learn from them, that they could recognize those. When my 23-year-old comes to me and says, these are red flags, and points out these red flags to me in situations, and I'm like, you're correct. And we're walking through the conversation of what is going on and expressing things and breaking things down more clarity. And it really is a sense of knowing for me these days. Like I just know. And I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for the growth in myself. I'm grateful that because I chose to heal myself and get sober and work on myself, not just my parenting was impacted, but my daughter's. My daughter and I were talking about it, and she's like, yeah, I just don't drink anymore. My spouse was just telling me the same thing. And I'm like, this is incredible. I'm not saying that alcohol is horrible because everybody isn't an alcoholic. Some people have absolutely self-control, right? And that is not advice for them. But for me, it was. But for them, they just seen there wasn't a value for it. It just didn't bring them, there was just nothing good attached to it. And so they just stopped. And that's how I knew that they weren't alcoholics, right? Like that was the difference for me, was because they were just like, yeah, it wasn't a big deal. And I'm like, that's where it differed for me. For me, it is a big deal. For me, it was a big deal. And I was telling my partner that that's how I knew I had a problem, and it took me a while to be able to be in a room with people who were drinking alcohol. But once I was able to, it doesn't bother me. I have this serious conversation. I had this serious, and I still have this serious conversations with my kids about it. And those, older grandkids, nieces, and nephews, when they're ready and it's time, I have had and will continue to have those tough conversations, especially knowing that their parents aren't there to give them and have those tough conversations with them because of addiction and alcohol. They don't have them in their lives because of those things. And so I will be that person to step in and love them and be truthful with them. But I was very open with them about it. And I think it's changed the trajectory of all of their lives today. I truly do. I hope that my words resonated with them and that my journey and what I've had to endure because of that stubbornness of continuing to battle addictions and continuing to put off working on myself. By the grace of God, I'm here today so that I can be that light for them. So I can be the change. But it doesn't always happen in families. And so I'm just grateful. And so parenting, there's just no navigation here. I feel like you're going to navigate waters that you maybe have never explored. The best advice I can give you is unconditional love. Please be the light and be unconditional love. And if you don't know how to handle it, go out and ask for help. There's so many parenting tips online today that can help. There's so many resources and support groups. There's so many things that you just have to be able to ask the hard questions. And don't worry about the negative Nancy's. Anybody who's giving you the grief about it, they're not the ones you should be focusing on. Focus on the people who are solution oriented. Focus on the people who want to help you get a positive, healthy solution and outcome to your parenting navigation. Because I feel like that is what's helped me the most become a better parent, to navigate waters, to help be a parent, help be that light and grandparent to my nieces and nephews and my kids today that have kids. Have learned so much because of the things we've grown up and done together and the things that we've learned together, things we've learned what to do and what not to do, things that work and didn't work for one might work for the other. But there's just so much diversity and so much versatility that don't be afraid to go out of the box. Don't be afraid to just love them in the season that they're in and just pray over your children and your grandchildren and their spouses and your loved ones. Like, pray over them. Pray over your partner's parenting skills, habits. Pray over all of it. Pray over their mindset to parenting. I had to do that with my spouse. He was a brand new parent, first time dad when we got together. Lyrics was his first, and he became an insta stepdad to three kids, two of them teenagers. Talk about throw them right on in. And I had to navigate some waters with him because we parented completely different. And I'd already done the things that he had done when I was a first time parent. And I'd already learned that those were not the things you wanted to do. The things that our parents did were not the things you wanted to do. There's just some things that don't work that caused us to act out. And there's some things that do work that did help us. And so everybody's different. You got to navigate the waters. But I absolutely am so grateful to be the mom I am today and the grandma I am today. Tomorrow I get to spend time with my daughter and her babies and her spouse, and I just get to be a loving light for them and just get to go love on them. And I'm just grateful that I can. And so, like, don't take anything for granted. There are so many people that want to be the parent that you get to be. And so you get to do this. You get to be that role model for your kids. You get to make an impact in their lives. You get to help them be better humans. And you get to teach them that they're limitless, that they can literally do anything and everything that they desire in this world. You get to create so much potential within them. And so I just pray for you as a mother and a father and whoever it is that you have those babies, that you were just holding them tight and that you just know that parenting is such a reward and a blessing. And I just know so many people who have struggled with that guilt of, am I doing it right? Just know that if you're showing up and you're doing your best to show up for them, you are right. You are doing it right. Have a blessed day.